Today we are breaking down some of the murkiest, muddiest, muckiest backfields in the NFL, going through dynasty, redraft, best ball angle for why we're in, why we're out, how we're handling these backfields. Because some backfields are so easy to figure out. Bijan Robinson in the Atlanta Falcons, for example. Saquon Barkley in the Philadelphia Eagles, for example. But some backfields are like, who the heck's going to start? Who's going to be the handcuff? Is it going to be a committee? Is somebody going to emerge? And those are the backfields that we're talking about today. We're going to do the same thing for the wide receiver position 2 days from now, so definitely stay tuned for that. But Danny, let's kick it off with what I would consider to be probably the most profitable backfield if we're able to get it right, especially given the architect of this backfield, Liam Cohen, produced one of the bigger league winners in fantasy last year with Bucky Irving and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Jacksonville Jaguars backfield is one that is hard to figure out because there's 3 guys that could be very capable in it, let alone, the 2 guys that were there last year.
And this is a backfield that I do think if you are able to nail right this year, I mean, we love Liam Cohen coming over, like you said, Trevor Lawrence, a quarterback we both believe in. Like, there is upside for this offense to be good. It's just because of the aspect that there's 3 guys that could be the running back one. All these guys are kind of at deflated values. Like you said, Etienne in Dynasty, 111.8 ADP, Bhayshul Tuten at 128.6, and Tank Bigsby at 157.8. In terms of how I'm tackling this, it is pretty interesting, because I do think Tuten would be the long-term play specifically from a dynasty angle. Obviously, the newest drafted running back of this regime. Gladstone, Liam Cohen handpicked this guy to fit that long-term vision for what they want for this backfield. But I do think specifically from a redraft perspective, maybe things get a little bit more murky, like you said.
Yeah, and like you said, dynasty perspective, Etienne's only got 1 year left on his rookie deal. Yep. Tank Bigsby's got 2 more years left on his rookie deal. He was a 3rd-round pick, but not by this regime, as you made reference to. I think it's pretty cut and dry how I'm handling it in Dynasty. It's like, I want Tuten at cost right now, but I don't hate Etienne, because even if he is only there for 1 more year, he could move on. He was a former 1st-round pick. He might get like a DeAndre Swift level contract with a different team. And then Tank Bigsby's the one guy that he slides far enough that I'm actually okay taking shots, especially as it relates to like Dynasty best ball leagues and stuff like that. The redraft angle and the best ball angle is the one where the debate really comes in, because how this backfield plays out this year is really challenging to figure out. Because when you look at Travis specifically, Travis, RB35, 104 overall ADP, he's actually risen about 10 picks since, a month ago when we started doing these drafts. How are you handling Etienne right now from like a redraft standpoint?
Yeah, so first and foremost, like you said, dynasty angle, I agree. Tuten's going to be the guy I prioritize. I view Etienne and Bigsby more so as 1-year plays. For Bigsby, maybe a 2-year play. But like you said, in redraft, I do have Etienne as the one of the situation, like the ADP does. For reference, RB35 Etienne, Bhayshul Tuten, RB40. And the guy, again, I'll talk about in a second, that I think may be the most undervalued of this backfield, Tank Bigsby at RB50. To me, Etienne's going to get the space work, immediate work as the 1A per se in this backfield. I think Tuten starts as the RB3 with Bigsby and Etienne being your duo. And then Tuten could potentially supplant Etienne as that main space back going forward.
The way I look at Etienne too is, and we'll talk about Swift later on in this video because it's a very similar situation, is that Etienne was like when you're with a girl who's like 80% of what you want, and you stay with her unless something really excellent comes along. And I think had the Hunter trade not been on the table for the Jacksonville Jaguars, they might have taken Ashton Genty at number 4 overall, and that would have spelled doom for Travis Etienne, and he's probably expendable. We heard could be expendable, not super high on him, as legitimate quotes coming out pre-draft about Travis Etienne. Post-draft, we've heard absolutely inaccurate, as the quote that Liam Cohen used. Everything we've asked to do of him, or him to do, he's done so and more. One of the most awful seasons we've ever seen from a running back who was going in the 3rd round of drafts last year. 8.7 PPR points per game. Like, we're talking brutal. 54.7 opportunity share. Just 150 carries, 52 targets. He had a shoulder injury, a hamstring strain about week 4 to 6 last year is when he started to get banged up. But he was RB7 in PPR points per game the year before that. He had great target share numbers and whatnot for a couple of years. In 2022, we saw that really efficient year, 5.1 yards per carry. And of course, going back to his college career, he was an excellent college player and was a 1st-round player. So Etienne, other than last year, has been a very good player most of his career in college and in the pros. It's just figuring out, does he fit this offense? Is he long for this situation? From a redraft angle, Etienne's been a volume guy, and there's more competition for volume in this backfield. So how does that play out? I've been tackling it through Etienne because I do think that he will be the early season guy.
Yeah, and I do agree. Out of these guys, if I have to take one as the first running back off the board, I do think ADP is accurate. ETN should be the first off the board. But specifically from an opportunity cost perspective, Bigsby was the more efficient runner last year. Bigsby got the trust of last year's coaching staff. Now, obviously, different regime, Gladstone coming in, Cone coming in. Obviously, it doesn't really matter if the last coaching staff trusted him because they are not the ones making the decisions right now. But to me, Bigsby is the best current runner on this team. And the fact that I can get him at a 14th round opportunity cost, especially an underdog where you're only really looking for spike weeks, like, yeah, sure, he's not going to be consistent week to week because the receiving work is what's going to keep Tank Bigsby back. But we saw him be an explosive runner last year, touchdown equity in this offense. If this offense does improve, offensive line play is better than what we saw last year. To me, Bigsby at his current cost is the one I've been targeting the most.
Yeah, and Cohen prioritizes like downhill decisive runners.
Yeah.
That's all he talked about in Tampa Bay. Rashad White needs to get more decisive. He needs to just hit the hole. Like that guy is Tank Bigsby. That is 100% the type of runner that he is. He is poised for a bigger role, is the quote that came out shortly after the draft and pre-draft as well. We heard a little bit of that stuff. He's probably second in the pecking order currently, I would say, behind Etienne. May have a specific role that's independent of both of these other two running backs. Like maybe Tuten is Etienne's backup and Bigsby's going to have the same role regardless of who's starting. We don't exactly know.
That's how I view it.
That's how I view it as well. Goal line and short yardage is probably where he makes his money. But then you have Tuten, who throws a wrench into everything, because Tuten was my RB6 in the 2025 running back class. He goes basically inside the top 100 picks almost. He was barely a fourth rounder, and he profiles the most like Bucky Irving of these running backs who Liam Cohen worked with last year. And this is the crucial part for me, because from a dynasty angle, I'm definitely on the Tuten hype train. Yeah. This is the crucial quote to me about why I think Tuten might lose a little bit of dynasty value early on in his career and then maybe regain it back as the season goes along or maybe into his second season. The quotes that have come out about Bhayshul Tuten have been, we're teaching him the why. We're slowing the game down for him. He's in the learning stage. And I get it's early in the offseason, but he was raw in college. And I do tend to think that the Trey Benson, Cam Akers, Javonte Williams rookie season would be kind of, I mean, Benson probably not comparable to those other guys, but Javonte Williams, Cam Akers, those type of guys later on in their rookie season started to take over. That's like best case scenario for Bhayshul Tuten, in my opinion. I don't think we're getting a guy who week one is going to be starting for this team.
And you mentioned Trey Benson. Realistically, his rookie season looks closer to what Trey Benson was last year, where it's like, you're getting efficient runs. You're seeing the flashes of the talent. Don't worry. We'll talk about Trey Benson a lot more later on in this video, but you see the talent on display. It's just the cerebral part of the game maybe isn't quite there for him to be a true running back one in his first year, especially come year two. Like year two, I wouldn't be shocked if Tuten was a sixth round pick in best ball, because the last 3 or 4 weeks down the stretch this year, he ends up being the RB12 in points per game. Like I see that in the range of outcomes. This is an offense I still want to target. But like I said, I think Bigsby's role is the one that is kind of differentiated from the other two. Etienne and Tuten, you have more third down appeal. You have more explosive appeal. And like you said with Tank Bigsby, you're getting the decisiveness. You're getting that between the tackles work and the potential goal line autonomy.
Yeah, and from a dynasty angle, I'm actually taking all three at cost. I think all of them are pretty good. I mean, I would say Etienne, the thing you're hoping for is that he moves on in free agency, and that's why you can take all three from a dynasty angle. Tuten probably develops into a year 2, year 3 starter, a la Trey Benson, like we just said. Bigsby is probably like the Charbonnet to Kenneth Walker of the short-term kind of projection for the next 2 seasons, where if Tuten is the Kenneth Walker of this offense, then Bigsby can be kind of like the Charbonnet of this offense. Redraft in best ball, I have absolutely taken a stance that Etienne is the one that I'm drafting at 23%. Tuten I've drafted at 18%, but I would say it's probably more of a CLV type of play, where I'm thinking closing line value on Bhayshul Tuten's ADP will go up as the offseason goes along, because when they're using words like we're in the learning stages, he's learning the offense, all that kind of stuff, I tend to think that he'll probably gain value as training camp goes along. And he started higher than where he's at now because of all those quotes coming out about Etienne and how he's not going to get dealt and all that kind of stuff. So I would say I'm playing this, and it also depends on the team you've drafted at that point in your draft as well. The early season play is usually what I need at this point for like my third running back, my fourth running back or whatever, with a chance to start all year. Because like I said, Travis has been a very good running back minus last year for most of his career. The late season play, given the nature of Best Ball Mania 6, is Tuten, and that's why I've been drafting a decent amount of him. But I would like to flatten out my tank versus Tuten because I only have tank 4.5%. I would like it to be about 10% for both guys.
So it's kind of similar, obviously, a little bit different for me because only a 19-team sample size. I'm still waiting for a lot of my slows to finish. But out of the 19 drafts that have finished since the NFL draft, Tank Bigsby is actually the one I have the highest ownership of. Of the 19 draft, I have a 31.6% ownership on. Travis Etienne, 21.1%. And Tuden, I've only been taking 5.3% of the time. I personally just feel like the discrepancy in ADP right now between Bigsby and Tuten doesn't make too much sense for me. Because like you said, at this point of the drafts, especially where Bigsby goes, if I can get him as the RB4, RB5 of my build on a team that already has Amari Hampton and Quinshon Judkins, to me, that's more valuable than taking the Joe Mixon plus Bhayshul Tuten combo.
Yeah, it's funny because with all these like 49ers schemes, we're usually faced with like a 3 running back decision. Like if you think about the Devon Etienne, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson decision a couple of years ago, obviously that would be attributed to Tuten being Etienne, Etienne being Mostert, and Jeff Wilson being Tank Bigsby in this situation. But it's hard because they're all like young and still in their primes and that kind of thing. And obviously Tuten probably not as refined of a prospect as Etienne was coming out as far as like instinctually he was a starter for multiple years and that kind of thing.
And I do think the competition for touch is like, even though Mostert was efficient, obviously had the 18 touchdown year, don't get me wrong. I just think personally from a player perspective, like the upside to be an RB1 in the backfield, I do think both Bigsby and Etienne kind of hold a lot more weight than what the Dolphins guys had.
Yeah. And again, best ball can be the way to play these guys. If it is a committee, you're probably going to get spike weeks from all of them, whether it's big touchdown games from Bigsby, maybe a long run or two here from Tuten, and then maybe you get a couple big workload games early on in the season from Travis.
Receiving work.
Yeah, it's going to be a mess, man. It's going to be a big time mess. I guess my stance is that I'm taking Travis in both formats, and from a dynasty perspective, hopefully he goes to a better place, and then Tuten is my long-term guy.
I mean, before we move on to the next team, it's only fitting we have to say this. Hey, just send Etienne to the next team we're going to talk about because we don't want to draft any of the Cowboys running backs right now.
Yeah, so Javonte Williams, Jaydon Blue, and Miles Sanders are the 3 backs that we got to deal with here. We got RB41 in Dynasty, Javonte Williams going outside the top 150. He's on a 1-year, $3 million contract. Jaydon Blue, 5th round pick. RB42 in Dynasty, the next running back off the board, 152 overall ADP. Miles Sanders, very late rounder, 20th plus round probably, 1 year, $1.3 million deal. From a Dynasty angle, we can start with that. Does anyone appeal to you here? Because my opinion is that they're running backs in college right now.
If you wanted to take a 3rd round rookie pick in a PPR league on Jaydon Blue, I think that's fine. He's got efficiency. He's got that receiving appeal. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's ever going to have, 12 to 15 plus carries per game. But if you're getting maybe, a 5 to 7 target workload and 8 carries per game, like that's probably about the projection you see for Blue. But I do agree with you. Like the main ball carrier, the guy that I think would have upside to carry the ball 15 times a game, 17 times a game, 20 times a game is currently not on the team. The way this team is currently constructed is, hey, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Jake Ferguson, improved offensive line. You will be carrying our offense. These running backs, yeah, sure, they'll contribute when they can. But for the most part, our identity as an offense is going to be as a passing unit. And it is funny because when Schottenheimer obviously took over, people were like, oh, look at his history. He wants to run the football. It's like, look at the running back room and actually read what the actions of the team is telling you.
Yeah, and you could have said the same thing about the backfield last year with Zeke Elliott and Rico Dowdle, but I think all of us would probably agree that if Rico was still on the team, we'd be drafting him way higher than these guys.
Well, and we had those conversations literally last summer, and I was always saying, hey, like Rico Dowdle, like I think people aren't realizing, like he's actually like pretty decent. Like people are always saying, well, he's never started before, he's never gotten the workload. It's like typically those bets are not the greatest bets to make, which is why his ADP was so cheap. But he was always efficient when he got the work for the Cowboys. And even in the year where Tony Pollard was wearing down, I even told you, I'm like, Rico Dowdle straight up looked like the better running back on the team, even when Pollard was there at times.
Yeah, no, we don't have a Dowdle situation. I mean, we might, like somebody might emerge, but the question is, which guy are you targeting? So Javonte has been in our lives for a while as a guy that we all liked for a while there, but RB38, 120th overall ADP on Underdog right now. He has not exceeded a 65. 65 is a low bar, by the way. PFF rushing grade since his rookie season, 3.6 and 3.7 yards per carry the last 2 years, 2.71 and 2.4 yards after contact per attempt since his injury. If you guys recall, North Carolina Javonte Williams, rookie year Javonte Williams, was a darling in advanced metrics as far as missed tackles forced and breaking tackles and yards after contact and stuff. He's been certified dust since his injury, but somehow he's still barely 25 years old. And he had 70 targets last year. He was fifth in the NFL with 70 targets in 2024. I don't know what the hell to do with Javonte Williams. And does the 10% scenario exist where maybe he just needed a little bit of extra time to recover from this injury and he looks like his old self? Sure. But like, am I holding my breath on that scenario? No.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally been sub 3.7 yards per carry in the last 2 years, like you said. It sucks too, because obviously pre-injury Javonte Williams was a guy that we
loved him
thought
going into the 2022 fantasy season.
Dude, he was on a fast track to be one of the best running backs in the NFL. So it is unfortunate, but by 25 years old, his career's kind of turned to what it is. I think his utility on this team, like you said, he's a very, very good pass blocker. This is a team that wants to throw the football a ton. And he was pretty good as a receiver last year. Again, 52 receptions, 346 yards. Obviously, I think him and Jaydon Blue will probably split up that receiving work. And, third down, long down and distance situations, you're going to see Blue because obviously there's no element, potential run here, potentially sitting in the pass pro as much. You're probably going to want to get Blue in space in those situations. But on like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, you just need your back to step in, protect, maybe run a quick screen, maybe run a quick drag or a quick flat route. I mean, Javonte Williams literally showed he could do that last year for the Broncos. So that's how I kind of view it. I think they're probably going to split receiving work, especially when you compare their receiving metrics to Miles Sanders, which don't do yourself a favor. If you haven't seen Miles Sanders receiving metrics, don't put yourself through that because he is one of the least efficient receivers that I have ever seen as a running back. He's quite clearly the most proven runner at this point in this backfield.
Yeah, the last thing I would say on Javonte is like maybe some people are thinking, well, how could I have been high on J.K. Dobbins last year and not high on Javonte Williams now because both guys were just injury prone or whatever? I mean, Javonte Williams wasn't a good athlete before his injury. J.K. Dobbins was an exceptional athlete before his injury. And anytime Dobbins played, he was really efficient and he has not been good. Javonte Williams, anytime he's gotten opportunities, even if he was going to do it, it would have been last year. 2 years post ACL, he was going to have a great season. Again, could in the 5% chance that he actually looks good this year, could he return on ADP and be a good pick? For sure. But I kind of just like playing this through the cheaper running backs. Like when you look at Jaydon Blue, running back 45, 141 overall ADP, fast, explosive back for the University of Texas, certified change of pace dude. I think a lot of people are going to get carried away and think he's this year's Bucky Irving because Bucky Irving is small too. And Bucky Irving's explosive too. But Jaydon Blue handled just 11 touches per game in his best season at Texas. And that was despite CJ Baxter tearing his Achilles before the season started, or tear his ACL before the season started. Bucky Irving in his final season handled 17.2 touches per game. And since his freshman year was handling at least 13 touches a game. So he was a much better prospect. He was a much better ball carrier. Best case scenario to me is that Jaydon Blue is like Tariq Cohen or Naeem Hines.
And I would agree with that. Again, no denying, even though we were lower on his rushing profile from college, very, very dynamic receiver, obviously giving you 4.2, 4.3 level speed. Like there is upside with big plays in this offense. If this offense does return to that top 5, top 10 level they were at in 2023, it's just the opportunity cost for me. Like you're going to have to spend a 12th round pick on that type of upside when, I mean, for example, I thought a comparable prospect to him was Brashard Smith from the Chiefs. We'll talk about Brashard Smith in a second, but the discrepancy between Brashard Smith's ADP and Jaydon Blue's ADP, like to me, they're the same bet.
Yeah, it's essentially just that you're getting more opportunity in front of Jaydon Blue because the starter in front of him is worse than Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, which is all that's happening. But realistically, like we've talked about multiple times on the channel, like you don't want to be taking running backs simply because of what it looks like in front of them. You want to be taking running backs that have a skill set to produce upside if they are in that situations. And realistically, the upside path to Jaydon Blue has to be in the receiving game because I don't see him being like Brashard Smith, a guy that's going to handle, 12 to 14 carries a game.
Well, and I just finished saying that Javonte Williams was 5th in the NFL in targets at the running back position. So that actually is a little bit of a barrier to Jaydon Blue's ability.
And he's great in pass pro.
He's a great pass protecting running back. So it's possible that he actually has a hard time getting on the field outside of special teams early on in his career. And then Miles Sanders is kind of the other guy in this backfield. He's RB 57, 186th overall ADP, risen about 25 picks in the last 2-3 weeks.
Shameless admission, he's actually the guy I've been taking the most at this current point.
He's easily the guy I've been taking the most of.
17th round pick. I mean, again, the efficiency has fallen off. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, last 2 years, the situation I feel like in Dallas is a lot better than it was in Carolina. And on top of that, I mean, the last time we saw him in a good situation, he literally was a 1,200-yard runner, and then obviously ended up getting that huge contract from the Panthers. We even said at the time, like, oh, I wouldn't have paid that much for Miles Sanders. Sure enough, he's back on the Cowboys on a minimum veteran contract deal. But you drafted an offensive lineman at 12th overall. You have an overall cohesive unit that's being built right now on that offensive line. Obviously, Cooper Beebe going into his second year, Guyton going into his second year, Tyler Smith, young ascending all-pro. Terrence Steele should be better, another year removed from his injury. Like, the offensive line for the Cowboys should be better. So if Miles Sanders can play behind a good offensive line, showcase his abilities as an explosive runner, like, the upside is there. And for a 17th round pick, not really finding that much upside elsewhere.
Yeah, and I get that running backs, there's an inverse correlation for how efficient they're going to be later in their career than they are earlier in their career. But we have a way bigger sample size of Miles Sanders being really efficient as a runner. 4.6, 5.3, 5.5, and 4.9 yards per carry his first 4 years, and then 3.4 and 3.7 the last 2 years, which he's been on Carolina, and they've been really, really bad. He's the only one of this group to rush for 1,000 yards in the NFL. He's got 3 top 24 seasons in points per game and 4 seasons with 4.6 yards per carry or more. If you squint, he's the best chance to get a workhorse running back in this backfield. Top 12 in opportunity share the last time he was in a good offense in the Philadelphia system there. So again, Miles Sanders is rising in ADP. Is that stupid? Probably. But could it work as a late round sleeper who could win out this backfield? I think it could. This does kind of remind me a little bit of Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, no, I can see that for sure. Like I said, though, do not look at his receiving metrics. I mean, the last 3 years, for example, 26 targets turned into 78 receiving yards in Philadelphia, 41 targets turned into 154 receiving yards in 2023 in Carolina. And then last year, again, it wasn't as bad. 30 targets turned into 148 receiving yards, but it's clear as day you're not getting access to 2019 rookie Miles Sanders, where it was very clearly evidently his most efficient receiving season.
Yeah, he had 509 receiving yards on 50 receptions, which is really good. Yeah, dynasty-wise, I am aligning myself with I kind of just want the cheapest option. Even Jaydon Blue to me seems somewhat overpriced in dynasty rookie drafts because I think there's better options going around him, like the tight ends, for example, some of the wide receivers. I would rather take over a guy like Jaydon Blue where he goes at the end of the second round, early third round. If he falls to the mid to late third round in a rookie draft, that's one thing, but that's not where he was going. He was going kind of early third round range.
And I guess the other guy I want to give credence to, again, not somebody I'm taking in any drafts right now, but if we do hear a drumbeat, maybe he looks good in the preseason, maybe one of these vet running backs were to get cut going into the season. If we do hear some buzz about Phil Maffa as well, he does have that physical profile to potentially take between the tackles carries. Like, I can see him potentially being a late riser in ADP.
Yeah. And then again, redraft wise, I've been taking 12% Miles Sanders, 4.5% Javonte Williams. I have never drafted Jaydon Blue. I think he's overpriced. I like the other guys that go around him. I want to get to about 5% of Javonte and Jaydon Blue each. And then I'm going to stay above market on Miles Sanders because I do think he's the best value on the board, but we'll see what the price looks like. And training camp buzz it's really going to start moving these guys around the board for sure. Because if we get buzz that we already did actually get buzz that Miles Sanders is split in first team reps or whatever, he's going to start rising and Javonte's going to start falling. And it's kind of like the Zach Moss, Chase Brown situation last year where if you got your Zach Moss early, you were not feeling good. But if you got it later when he started falling, then you probably got your shares then, which is what I did because I was hammering Chase Brown early. And then Chase Brown started getting more expensive. And then I'm like, I'm going to cool off Chase Brown and actually take some Zach Moss now.
Yeah. And unrelated note, we'll talk about the wide receivers later on this week. That's why I've been drafting a bunch of Keenan Allen because he's going to wreck somebody's room.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So let's move on. Speaking of Keenan Allen, let's move on to the Bears. Chicago Bears backfield is pretty simplified now. At first, we were like, okay, this is where Chubb goes. This is where Dobbins goes or whatever. But now it's still just DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, Kyle Manangi, who they drafted in the 7th round. DeAndre Swift, from a dynasty perspective, a little pricey for my liking. RB28, 111 overall ADP. Last year of guaranteed money. He's 26 years old. He's a short-term play. I'd rather draft a wide receiver at that point. It's pretty cut and dry from a dynasty perspective. You're taking him over better receiver, quarterback, and tight end projections at that point. Roschon Johnson, RB64, 212 overall ADP, 2 years left on his rookie deal. Dynasty-wise, I like him more for sure because he's a little bit younger and he has very, very little cost.
100 pick opportunity cost. Well, that's the thing. It's like we always talk about it in the frame of opportunity bundles. And if you actually look at a recent startup, I did. So I'll go to X Content League, go to the draft results. So we see, like you said, DeAndre Swift goes off the board 111 average ADP. He goes off the board in this draft probably around around that range.
111 ADP is the 9th round, which is way too high.
Yeah, he went at the 905 in this draft. Shout out 905, the hammer. He went at the 905 in this draft. For reference, Roschon Johnson went more so in those middle rounds at the 16-6. So if you're comparing a 16th round receiver, you're looking at Xavier Legette, Jalen McMillan, Adonai Mitchell, Hollywood Brown. You're looking at the 9th round receivers in that range. Like Josh Downs only went a couple picks before him. Chris Godwin, Jaden Reed, Calvin Ridley, Steph. Like just
no shot. I'm taking DeAndre Swift over those guys.
Yeah, on top of that, it's like Swift went 2 rounds before like a James Conner. It's like if you're going to prioritize point production at that point, just take the lessened opportunity cost there because they're relatively similar redraft projections. And even though Swift is young, I don't know how much staying power he has as a team's running back 1, but I mean, speaking of staying power as a running back 1, we don't really care about staying power in redraft. We'll talk about why Swift is quite appealing at his current cost. Specifically, the RB26 is what I noticed. I do have him slightly ahead of that, being even more so a bearish DeAndre Swift guy in the past. And you have him way above the RB26.
Yeah, I have my RB21, man. He's
RB25 for me.
So the appeal for DeAndre Swift is that he's after the dead zone where he goes, at least in more sharper leagues. Like in home leagues, maybe he goes a lot higher than this, but in more sharper leagues, underdog drafts, you can get him like 7th, 8th round, which to me is a very stomachable cost for a guy who has been a top 24 running back every year of his career and has an O-line upgrade across the board, but especially in the interior. He, averaged 3.8 yards per carry last year, but it was the only year of his career in which he was under 4.5. So it's not like he's been inefficient his entire career. He just was inefficient last year. And we were making the same excuse for Romo Dunze, DJ Moore, and all the other receivers and quarterbacks in this offense that they can be inefficient and we don't hold it against them. But why aren't we doing it for DeAndre Swift would be my point there. And the coaching efficiency, I mean, he's worked with Ben Johnson before. And the last time he was healthy with Ben Johnson, he had 78 targets. I think there's a very good chance that he has a major receiving uptick in this offense because he only ran 38% of the routes last year. And with the Lions, he was up 50, 60%.
Yeah, no, there's definitely appeal there, especially too. I'm lower on Swift the talent per se, but I'm not really all that concerned. Like Roschon Johnson will take some goal line equity. Kyle Mongai, sure, some people liked him more than we did. I thought he was kind of a plotter in college, and maybe he takes some between the tackles work. But realistically, what do you run, like a 4.65?
I think he's like Kevin Harris level plotter, like just useless to me. I didn't like Kyle Mongai at all. I'm really shocked that people think he's good.
Yeah, like to me, he was kind of a sloth, but I don't know. Like maybe he works into the between the tackles carries, but like you're going to point out in a second, I'm assuming you don't need Swift to be a 20 carry per game guy. If Swift is a 12, 13 carry, 5-6 target per game player, it's like at RB26, it's hard not to hit on that.
I actually would really like it if Swift does not have 300 opportunities again this year because he had 300 opportunities last year and it kind of backfired. Even though he played 17 games, he was the least efficient that he's ever been. And I really do think that when you look at DeAndre Swift's best seasons, he averaged 11, 13 carries a game in Detroit when he was at his peak, 2020, 2021, 2022. And he got a majority of his, good, efficient touches were through the receiving game. And he averaged 4.6, 4.1, 5.5, and 4.6 yards per carry the first 4 years of his career because he wasn't being ran into the ground.
Yeah, no, I can see that. However, I will say we do have to contextualize, of course, people watching at home. He did play in the Lions offensive line, which is top 2 in the league, and the Eagles offensive line, which is top 2 in the league. And it's like, although I do think that the Bears offensive line is much improved from last year, we do have to contextualize that those most efficient seasons happened in a context where the offensive line in front of him was a lot better. And also in terms of the target totals, maybe I'm a little bit more wary projecting not the Philadelphia, but the Detroit level target share, simply because the Bears have more relevant receivers than the Lions did at that time.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But he outscored his Philadelphia Eagles season last year, even despite being really, really inefficient.
Yep. Well, I mean, that's all volume, and we kind of pointed out we just don't think he'll get that volume. But
I want it to balance out. He had 12.6 PPR points per game last year. Touch the volume down a little bit. Efficiency should go up a little bit. And I think he can be a 14, 15 point per game producer. And in the 7th, 8th round, I feel pretty good about that.
Wait, 12.6 PPR points per game?
Yeah, Zay Flowers.
That's more than Zay Flowers.
Yeah. Anyway, this is the running joke that Zay Flowers actually stinks, that Danny that is a hater on him. But I don't know. My take on this backfield is I'm not taking Swift in Dynasty. He's really overvalued over there. But in redraft, absolutely. At that price tag, I mean, I've drafted him quite a bit.
Yeah, and like I said, I have him slightly ahead of ADP, so maybe you will be at 12 to 15% because you have him RB21, he goes RB26. I'll probably be more so in that 8 to 11% area at or slightly ahead of ADP or slightly ahead of the market.
Yeah, I have him at 14% right now, so I'm probably going to actually get more of him, to be honest. I've also drafted him on my only big dog team too. So in terms of draft fees that I've allocated to him, I'm actually probably above that.
Yeah, and for reference, for those of you that are curious, obviously 12 teams per league in those drafts. 8.3% is about average because obviously if you do 100 divided by 12, you'll get 8.3. So if you're at above 8.3% on Underdog, that typically means you're more exposed to players.
Yeah, absolutely. So those were I would say the major backfields that have a lot of fantasy implications and also are a little bit muddier than some of the other ones. A couple of these are a little clearer in terms of what we're looking at, or they don't have as much implication as far as what a hit looks like and how much it would affect your fantasy teams, your dynasty rosters, your best ball teams, whatever. Let's talk about the Vikings backfield, because I do think if somebody emerged from this backfield, it would be pretty significant. The only thing is I kind of feel pretty confident it's going to be Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, RB36 in ADP right now in a dynasty lens, 131 overall. He's 30 years old. That's why he's going so low. Jordan Mason, RB45, 162 overall. Pretty cut and dry. I actually think both of them are pretty decent price tags in dynasty. If you're in a startup, you'll know by that point in the draft if you're competing or not. And Aaron Jones is a very good value at that point.
Yeah, I agree. Especially from a dynasty lens, you know that you're strictly buying him for his running back point equity. And at an RB36 cost, you know exactly what you're getting. Because, for example, I mean, there are other, short-term plays. Don't get me wrong, Derrick Henry inherently is going to score more points than Aaron Jones. But it's you're selecting a Derrick Henry in the 6th round of your startup. That's a lot more of a opportunity cost investment than spending the 1208 or whatever. I mean, what even is 13.1 ADP, the 1105 or something?
Yeah, it's we're talking 11th round probably for Aaron Jones. And in the leagues that you and I play in, it'd probably be 12th, 13th round.
11-1, I think, actually. Wait, no, 10-11. Something like that, regardless.
Yeah, basically the 11th round. So you're feeling pretty good about where you're getting Jones at that point. From a redraft angle, they're close in price. And I'm surprised how close, personally, because
I understand it a little bit more.
RB29 versus RB31 for starters. 83.2 for Aaron Jones, to me, is a great price. I think that's a great price. 95.7 is way higher than most contingent upside backs in fantasy this year. Maybe this is a hot take. Maybe because everybody's favorite sleeper to take over a backfield was Jordan Mason. As soon as he signed there, or as soon as they traded for him, everybody goes, man, he could start for the Vikings this year. That was the basic vanilla fantasy analyst take, which is true. It was probably a good bet. Aaron Jones is 30 years old, has suffered some injuries in the past, but he played 17 games last year, and he still averaged over 4.5 yards per carry. And he's been also, like DeAndre Swift, a top 24 running back every season of his career. So I don't really get why we're projecting Jordan Mason to take over this backfield. It will take an Aaron Jones injury, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit higher on Mason comparatively than you are. Again, not by much per se. I mean, where do you have him ranked?
I'm lower on Mason. I have him RB40 from a redraft perspective, and I have Aaron. Okay. It's because I have Aaron Jones RB25, which is a couple spots higher than his ADP. And I also I think that the Vikings might regress a little bit as far as offensively what they did last year.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. So I am a little bit lower on Jones, a little bit higher on Mason than you. I have Jones at RB28. I have Mason at RB32. So I'm actually pretty aligned with ADP. To me, I mean, I think they can coexist in this backfield. We love this offense. We love Kevin O'Connell. The offensive line improved by a ton this offseason with Brian Kelly being brought in, Will Fries being brought in. To me, when I'm looking at this situation, they're both bets that I would bet on for standalone value. I think Aaron Jones is going to be the guy that I'm targeting, of course, because I have him a little bit higher. Aaron Jones, you're getting the third down appeal. You're getting the efficiency, the explosive nature. Obviously, he's going to bring some big plays to the table.
Has not lost a step, by the way. He has not played bad at any point.
But even when he was in Green Bay, he was never a 300 opportunity type of running back. So realistically, even if Aaron Jones is playing at prime Aaron Jones level, I think there is meat left on the bone for Jordan Mason to take some consequential touches simply because of the usage we have seen from Aaron Jones, even when he was in his prime. On top of that, if you do bake in, he's a little bit older, maybe he does take a slight step back. Maybe that is a 52-48 situation, 55-45. And with Jordan Mason, you're potentially getting the size, the goal line equity, scoring opportunity. I think both have standalone value, but the reason why I also am targeting both is if either injury happened, Jordan Mason were to go out or Aaron Jones were to go out, these would legitimately be top 10 running backs in our rankings because we want to be targeting the Vikings running back.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking strictly from a durability perspective, it's more likely that Mason gets hurt than it is Jones, based on
more than likely.
the history of the two guys in their
broke his collarbone last year.
Like, he had some significant stuff that he was dealing with last year, and Jones played 17 games.
Yeah, and I think people rationalize, like, inherently, obviously the injury pass is there, but inherently the older running back's going to be more prone given the overall touch workloads in their careers.
Right, of course. But according to most like docs, the more indicative factor of injury is past injury, not age.
Yeah, no, I think it's reasonable. Again, on top of that, you got hamstring concerns every year. Like, it's very polarizing. I think people understand that this is a consequential decision that needs to be made because we want Vikings running back one. And I've just been playing both because I don't want to be exposed to, I don't want to be underexposed to one in the scenario that they are the league winner that you need.
Yeah, I'm about double Jones as I am Mason. I have Jones 9% and Mason 4.5%. So I'm not out on Jones or on Mason necessarily. I prefer Jones at cost. And also, Mason goes in an area where I feel pretty good about, like, specifically the next backfield that we're going to talk about, taking a shot on this backfield because they're younger and there's a guy that can win it out without injury. So that's kind of where I'm at with Mason is like at 4.5%. That's actually even a little bit higher than I want to be exposed to Jordan Mason. I'll probably by the end of the offseason want to be about 3% and like 10% Jones. I think that's about where I want to be by the end of the offseason.
I just think if you're too underweight to Mason, you're leaving yourself with a scenario that, oh shoot, the league winner that I needed. Like, for example, to me, what if this situation is reminiscent of Ramondre Stevenson a few years ago?
It could be. It could be. I just think that Mason is a very similar bet to other contingent upside plays, like Tajay Spears and Trey Benson, who go like 50 picks after.
I just think you're paying the premium because of the access to the Vikings offense.
I think why people are paying the premium is because they've already seen him do it in terms of what he looks like as a contingent play. And I know confidently that Charbonnet and Benson and Spears and stuff are excellent contingent plays as well. I don't really think there's any more any more likelihood that Aaron Jones goes out versus James Conner. I think they're about the same. They're the same age. Conner's actually been more banged up than Jones.
Yeah, partially I agree. Like, people have seen it before. And keep in mind, by the way, every single season of his career, Jordan Mason has been above 5 yards per carry on that 49ers offense. On top of that, you're also getting a very stylistically similar offense with the Vikings. So, I don't know. Like, I do want to be getting a good amount of Jordan Mason exposure because if he does have this standalone backfield to himself, I do see a back that we would be ranking RB8 in week 8 rankings, RB7 in week 11 rankings. Like, I do see the appeal there.
Yeah, like I said, only thing for me is that I think you can say that about Benson and Spears and those guys later, a lot later than where Mason goes. And I think it's a little early for a contingent play. Kind of reminds me of like when we would take AJ Dillon a little bit too high and we're like, what about the standalone role? It's like he's never making your lineup in best ball unless he's the starting running back.
I do see a little bit more scenario with Mason, though, simply because when we're looking at it, he could have a 2-touchdown game and Aaron Jones could still get 15 touches in that game.
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible. Let's talk about the Giants backfield because they go right
very
after
interesting
these guys. And this one, from a dynasty angle, I think is more important to figure out than it is from a redraft angle because somebody in dynasty could really, really rise up the rankings if one of them emerges because Tracy already had a great season last year. So if Tracy has another great season again and fends off Cam Scatteraboo, who goes ahead of him in dynasty, RB26 versus RB31, both of them going around the like 9th round, give or take, in terms of dynasty startup ADP. Cam Scatteraboo was the better prospect by a lot, actually, I might add.
I was higher on Tracy than you were.
I mean, but from the prospect model standpoint, we have an RB1 upside prospect versus a flex play prospect. From a hit rate standpoint, it's not even close. But when you bake in that Tracy's already hit in the NFL relative to his cost, he was like a top 24 running back, then it becomes a lot closer. So for me in dynasty, you got to take a stance because they're the same price. It's if one guy was going way later than the other, I'd be like, oh, maybe just take the cheaper option, but they're going like basically exactly in the same spot.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue of it for me. I actually am on team Tyrone Tracy. Like I said, yeah, sure. Objectively speaking, with the production profile, with a little bit more draft capital there for Scadaboo. Like Scadaboo was a better prospect. I did have a higher grade on Scadaboo than I did Tracy, but like I said, I did have a much higher grade on Tracy than you did. I had him last year as here. If I scroll down here, I believe my RB7 in the class, and you had him as your RB13. So there is a difference there. I actually had him comp to a guy like Tony Pollard. So the fact that he already showed efficiency in his rookie season, the fact that he already showed the ability to handle an RB1 type of workload on top of being an efficient receiver on an offense that we both believe will inherently improve this year with Russell Wilson versus insert, Drew Lock and Daniel Jones at the end of last year. Like the Giants offense last year was an absolute train wreck, but we saw the flashes that we needed to see from Tracy. The way I kind of look at this is obviously completely Walmart version, but kind of how, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are being used with Detroit. Tracy being your space back, third down back receiving work, Scadaboo being your goal line between the tackles guy. I think both are going to have an appeal just to me because Tracy has proven to me he can handle a 3-down workload last year. He's the guy that I've been taking specifically in best ball.
We've seen this before, and it's almost identical this time to me. The type of back that they wanted in Washington after Antonio Gibson couldn't stop fumbling the ball, dropping the ball, making mistakes. They went and got a reliable running back like Brian Robinson. And I think Cam Scadaboo is very similar to a guy like Brian Robinson. And the only real question I have, because I am actually team Tracy in redraft, I'm definitely team Scadaboo in Dynasty, but I am team Tracy in redraft, is because Tracy is the bird in the hand in the short term. Structurally, I usually take him because, like I said with Etienne, I like getting a guy who's going to get touches early in the season in that range of the draft because the running back position starts to fall off and I can take upside swings later. If I have 3 or 4 running backs already, I take Tracy and then I can swing on late round DJ Giddens types or whatever later on in the draft. I don't like taking contingent or like not contingent upside, but short, like sketchier bets in the top 100 like Cam Scadaboo goes on Underdog. I think he's going a little bit too high in redraft, but from a dynasty angle, I think it makes sense because he is probably, once he gets a full acclimation to the workload, he's probably going to take away the goal line work and the early down work. And Tracy will probably be like the Antonio Gibson of this offense, and it'll be hard to figure out when to start him aside from when Scadaboo's out of the lineup.
I think that's reasonable to me. I do see more 3-down appeal with Tracy than maybe you do.
I think
like, I think there's a possibility
that they showed that they kind of want somebody more reliable.
I think that's fair. I just will point to the fact I also think there's a realm of possibilities. Tracy's the RB1 and Scadaboo is the backup here.
I agree. I think from a redraft standpoint, it's possible. I mean, if it happens in redraft, it's more likely to happen in Dynasty. I get that. It's just challenging because I think, again, Tracy was good. Was he great? No. He was
I mean, given the circumstances, over 4 yards per carry, very efficient as a receiver, like the offensive line was a train wreck. Look how bad Devin Singletary was.
It was, yeah. Again, it's hard to figure out what was like really real about what Tracy did because, I mean, I said RB2. He was 10.7 fantasy points per game. There's probably splits that you could point to when he started and whatnot that he was an RB2. And he was definitely, when I was doing RB tier lists throughout the season, he was generally in mid RB2 range for me most of the year when he was starting for the team. But so, I mean, part of it's like,
I have something for you, by the way.
Is this guy reliable? That's the thing I keep coming back to. And I think that's the coaching staff's asking the same question.
So how gross was the 2023 Houston offensive line, in your opinion? The one that, Dameon Pierce obviously struggled behind.
Oh, it was really bad.
So Devin Singletary averaged 4.16 yards per carry on 200 carries on that offense. He averaged 3.87 yards per carry on 113 carries for the Giants last year. So, like, objectively speaking, from an efficiency perspective for their running backs, the Houston offensive line in 2023 was better for their running backs than the Giants offensive line was last year. And Tyrone Tracy was still efficient.
The 2023 Houston Texans also had CJ Stroud at quarterback, and it's a better running scheme.
Yeah, no, and I think that's fair, but I would also argue Russell Wilson versus the Giants quarterback selection last year is a pretty big upgrade.
Oh, yeah, it's a big upgrade. I take both of these guys above market. I have Tyrone Tracy above market by like a decent amount. I think I'm 25%. Like I've been drafting him like crazy. And then I have 9% Scadaboo too. So it's not like I'm not drafting Scadaboo. I like Tracy.
Oh, no,
this year
I
from
agree.
a redraft standpoint. Dynasty wise, I'm actually a little wary of both, to be honest, just given where they go. I think I can get better projections, whether it's a short-term guy like we talked about already, like a Swift or a Pacheco or somebody like that. If you're picking where Scadaboo is, you want a short-term guy, that makes sense. Or if you want a long-term guy like where Tracy goes, like I feel good about like a Benson or a Spears or somebody like that, maybe having a little bit of a clearer path to being a starting running back uncontested in the short term.
Yeah, I feel like at this range, like they're more so like non-committal picks, whereas like I prefer either committing to straight point equity or committing to potential upside there.
Yeah, if you're running like a 1-year punt with Cam Scadaboo, I think that's kind of a fine selection there. But I feel it's like a shit or get off the pot, make a decision on what you're doing type of pick. And you're hoping and praying that one of them clearly outwins the other if you make a selection here. And you're going to have probably a 50-50 chance of being right, or they're going to eat into each other for the next number of years, and you'll not be right in either case. So Chiefs backfield, let's get into it. We can speed through these last couple. We have Pacheco, Brashard Smith, Kareem Hunt, Elijah Mitchell. Pacheco is the significant one in terms of are we in or are we out? Because he's going off the board RB25 in Dynasty, 100 overall ADP. We can both agree that's too high from a Dynasty perspective.
Yeah.
You're taking receivers that go in that range, generally quarterbacks, tight ends that go in that range. We're talking like Chris Olave's ADP. Like that's how friggin' ridiculous Isaiah Pacheco RB25 is.
100.8 ADP RB25. If I'm looking at our startup as well, that just happened. Where did Mr. Isaiah Pacheco go?
I don't think he's gone in our startup currently, and we're in like the mid-7th round, but he'll probably go in the next round or two.
Sorry, more so talking about the startup that okay, so he slipped a little bit in this one. He went at the 11-2. But like you said, his ADP is at 100.8. So most startups, that's more so like an 8th or 9th round pick. 8th or 9th round picks, we're talking, Jerry Jeudy, Matthew
Downs
Golden,
is the guy that comes to my head.
Josh Downs, Chris Godwin. Like there's just so many, even like Kyle Williams. Like we're talking, you go even further at wide receiver, like realistically, Michael Pittman's in the 10th round. Deebo Samuel's in the 11-9. Like there's just so many good wide receivers in this range.
Yeah, it's hard to click the button on a lot of the guys in this range at running back because I'd rather get my guys earlier or I would rather punt and take them later. From a redraft angle, similar to Swift, I actually quite like Isaiah Pacheco this year because relative to where he goes in redraft, you're not deciding between excellent projections at wide receiver, quarterback. I mean, quarterback and tight end, there's good projections on the board, but structurally it makes more sense to take a running back, your third RB or whatever, at pick 80.9 where Isaiah Pacheco goes, RB27. I have him ranked RB22. So among running backs, I'm higher on Isaiah Pacheco from a redraft angle. And also part of it too is like he was clearly the RB1 before he got injured last year and 2 years ago, obviously too. He looked bad when he came back, and we've seen other running backs look bad.
Tony Pollard.
Yeah.
Tony Pollard. Broken tibia or broken fibula? It's one of those bones.
I think it's a tibia, if I'm not mistaken.
Regardless, it was the exact same injury as Tony Pollard, who got objectively better the year after. So the appeal here is, quite frankly, we're talking about a Chiefs offense led by Patrick Mahomes with the best receiving talent and scoring potential equity that we've seen in the last couple of years. And the running backs ADPs right now are RB27, RB64, RB66, and RB78. Like somebody here is mispriced.
Yeah, somebody's mispriced, and it would indicate it's Pacheco because there's a 37 pick discrepancy among running backs between the first running back and the second running back selected, which means the starter is probably the one that's undervalued. And even though we're not certain it's Pacheco, we're pretty sure it's Pacheco. And it was actually a fibula, not a tibia. I just looked it up. Isaiah Pacheco I loved him last year. We both loved him last year. We were super in. It's unfortunate that he got hurt because he probably would have had a great year. And also probably as a 7th round pick would have gone a long way for him getting extended from a dynasty perspective. So if you think Pacheco can bounce back, he's probably mispriced in both formats, but it's not as much baked into his price on dynasty formats as it is in redraft and best ball, which is why I would rather get him in redraft and best ball. And if you wanted to invest in him in dynasty, maybe wait a couple games into the season to do it, even if you have to pay a little bit of a premium.
That doesn't make sense to me in his why he's higher in dynasty running back ADP than redraft running back ADP. Like, guys, like he's coming off a broken leg and he's not extended. Like,
yeah, he's 25 with no contract insulation to the Chiefs, and he's higher in dynasty for some reason.
He's a clear 1-year play and a very good 1-year play. Like, quite frankly, RB25 I think is a very good value for him. We'll talk about. I mean, I have him RB24, but he's one of the running back clicks that is the easiest for me to make in that 8th round area where he currently goes. Him, Brian Robinson. Like, realistically, that range of running back, I want to be drafting one because when you're looking at it, like I said, Isaiah Pacheco. We got, Brian Robinson, Aaron Jones. We talked about Jordan Mason. That would be one of the last names of this group. Obviously, Tyrone Tracy. Like, running backs after that are just kind of gross. And you're telling me you have potential access to the RB1 2023 Isaiah Pacheco in the 81st overall pick in your redraft leagues.
Yeah, which when he was going there the first time in 2023, he paid off 15 you get 15 fantasy points per game out of a 7th or an 8th round pick. Like, that's an unbelievably good pick. Like, if he had produced 15 points a game last year, being drafted at the end of the 2nd round, early 3rd round, that would be a moderately disappointing season. But now that it's baked in that he maybe isn't as good as, some of the other running backs that go higher that are starting running backs, he doesn't have to be much better than 15 points per game to absolutely crush a 7th or an 8th round ADP.
And objectively, how much less dynamic was the Chiefs' offense with Kareem Hunt as their RB1 versus with Isaiah Pacheco in 2023?
Not much. It was like basically the same. And not to mention too, like, Rice was hurt, Worthy was a rookie, and Marquise Brown was hurt. And they're all back this year. And they should be better, I would assume, as well. Maybe not.
Well, I was just saying they were more explosive with Pacheco in 2023, objectively.
Yeah. Oh, as a running offense. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, Hunt held down the job and was still very fantasy relevant, even despite not being very good.
Like, the play, if you're drafting a lot of Kareem Hunt, is you're betting on him with the trust of the coaching staff. Maybe he reprises that role. Like, realistically, to me, the cases for each of them, Isaiah Pacheco, he's the clear RB1 in 2023. You're hoping he gets back to that level. Brashard Smith, Samaje Perine leaves down a 3rd down role. If you want to take him in the 18th round of your best ball drafts for him to potentially get 3rd down work, I think that's reasonable. Like the case I made for Jaydon Blue, I think Brashard Smith has that type of role in this Chiefs offense. Kareem Hunt, I just mentioned, and then the forgotten man, I would say, of this group, Elijah Mitchell. And we were actually talking a little bit about this off camera, where he's just like the complete wild card here, where it's like, he was efficient in San Francisco, but he battled a ton of injuries, and we've seen him be a fantasy relevant running back too before, but it hasn't been for the few years. Like, if anybody's going to be like the J.K. Dobbins of this group, would it not be him?
No, it would not.
Why not?
My opinion on Mason and Mitchell and any running back that leaves San Francisco is probably their best production came in San Francisco.
Yeah, and I think that's a reasonable take, but he is interesting nonetheless as I scroll the F down 18th rounder.
Yeah, scroll the F down 18th rounder. He's definitely fine for that. Let's rattle through the last couple of backfields here. We got Cardinals, Titans, Steelers. Cardinals, I think most people expect long-term it's going to be Trey Benson. Short-term it's going to be James Conner. That's pretty much what, like, I would say if you're drafting in dynasty drafts, RB29, 111th overall James Conner, you are foregoing the idea that James Conner will be relevant probably even after this year, let alone, multiple years into the future. Trey Benson should be the long-term starting running back here. I would say it's possible that he's not very good and James Conner stays for another year after that. But generally speaking, it's probably you're going to play it through Trey Benson when you have a rebuilding team, through James Conner if you have a contending team, and you're going to be on your merry way. I think the actual question to ask ourselves here is James Conner going to be RB14 in PPR points per game again? Because he was a massive steal in drafts last year because everybody assumed Benson would take over second half of the season. And he never did.
Yeah, again, he's very, very polarizing on that aspect. I agree with you. James Conner, obviously fantastic last year. I don't want to take anything away from him. He clearly showed that from an efficiency perspective, from a receiving perspective, like he was a bell cow running back on an offense that should only get better this year. The problem, though, is Conner hasn't finished a single season in his career, literally got hurt on the 3rd snap of week 17 last year, and Trey Benson's entering year 2 after being a day 2 pick. To me, when I'm looking at it, especially in Dynasty, don't get me wrong. Dynasty, I'm not drafting Conner unless, like you said, you're grading him for a 2nd round pick, not in a startup.
Yeah, I would never draft him in a startup. It's if I'm trading for him, I guess, that I'm okay with his cost.
You're a contender. You want to throw a late 2 at Conner because it's a 1-year play. I think that's a reasonable cost to pay. But realistically, you're not acquiring James Conner unless you have a full status top 3 or 4 contender in your league, which you just don't have the certainty of in a startup situation. So for me, I'm not drafting him in a startup. Trey Benson kind of fits every single build because if you're a contender, high implied handcuff. If you're a rebuilder, young running back to build around. Like, to me,
perfect 1-year punt. I think he's a perfect 1-year punt running back to take because he could legitimately be a top 20 running back this time next year. Even like if Conner retires, Conner moves on to a different team, even if he doesn't do anything this year, like let's say he just is kind of efficient, Conner's the starter all season long. Trey Benson going into March before the team investments, you'd have a selling window. Maybe they would address the position in the draft. Maybe they would sign somebody in free agency, but you'd at least have a big selling window and a profitability spike in Trey Benson a calendar year from now, which is why I think he's perfect for a 1-year punt or a rebuild.
Yeah, and specifically, so we'll talk about it from a redraft lens because I think it's pretty cut and dry in Dynasty. Unless you're a heavy contender, you're not getting James Conner, whereas Trey Benson a little bit more fluid, at this point. In redraft, it's very polarizing because you either can respect what James Conner did last year, and if you need early season touches, I think he's got a reasonable price in best ball right now. And Trey Benson, the case for him, quite simply, like I said, Conner hasn't finished a full season. Trey Benson was literally a guy we compared to Breece Hall light. We thought he was the clear top 2 running back in last year's class. And there is a path for him to potentially earn more work in year 2. He was efficient in year 1, 291 rushing yards on 63 rushing attempts. I think there's more meat left on the bone for him as a receiver. Like, if he does crack into this workload again, last year it was workhorse James Conner, Trey Benson's the backup. If it does even become a 65-35, potentially by the end of the year, a 57-43, 55-45 situation, I think you're getting a good bang for your buck because in best ball, Trey Benson is the type of guy that can take 10 touches on a week and enter your lineup.
Yeah, and Connor's hard, man, because he literally led all running backs in juke rate last year.
He was good.
He was so good. And it's so hard to just be like, yeah, maybe Benson's going to take over when like
best season of his career.
Connor's like the most like beloved player in their locker room too, which is like such a hard thing to measure, but it also is going to break ties. Like if let's say Benson and Connor are equally as good as each other, you're still probably going to give Connor the bigger workload because he's more reliable and he's like a team captain and all that kind of stuff. So it's really hard to figure out how Benson gets there unless Connor gets hurt or falls off dramatically.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable, but again, you're
so it's possible both of those things happen.
The thing is like you have so many paths to paying off at a 140 ADP. Like Trey Benson goes after Jaydon Blue on Underdog right now. Trey Benson goes after Jaydon Blue. And at that point, it's like if you're only getting him for the implied upside for Connor, a guy, like I said, who hasn't finished the season, maybe instead of him going down in week 17, that happens now in week 8 or 9. If you're getting
3 games of a Trey Benson starting, he'll be like, what if he pays off like Charbonnet paid off last year, where he had a couple games where Walker was out and he kind of smashed his ADP because he was dominant in the games that Walker was out for.
And yet Charbonnet goes 26 picks ahead of him right now.
Yeah, like it's a similar implied upside play, which is why I made the comparison to him and Mason. It's just, Connor, I feel like just like Jones, when healthy and on the field, they're good running backs. It's hard to tell me like, unless Benson looks vastly different. Another part of this too is that Benson was raw coming into the league. And I think he'll probably progress quite a bit year 1 to year 2 after a full off season. Game slows down for him. Training camp buzz could probably raise his price quite a bit too. I would imagine that if Benson's he's splitting first team reps, he looks really great in camp, then Connor's price goes down and Benson's price goes up.
And to me, I think one of the biggest edges specifically in best ball, it sounds so simple, but not enough people do this. Close your eyes. Imagine a perfect scenario, week 17. Who are the guys that maybe don't have access to a big workload right now, but if they would legitimately change the lens of how best ball is being played? Benson is one of those guys to me because there is the upside case where if he gets 15 touches in a week 16 setting, advances you over, like why can't he have a Breece Hall level finish to the year? Like I think from a talent perspective, they're very comparable.
Even if he's a low advance rate player and you get him through because you had really good running backs ahead of him, like that's a unique piece that could get into the best ball finals or whatever. So yeah, from a redraft perspective, I don't think he's that appealing. Like he's just a handcuff. You probably drop him after week 4 or whatever if Connor's playing well. But long-term best ball mania tournaments like that where you can't make waiver claims, like he's definitely really appealing. And then from dynasty lens, I think by next year we should be seeing James Conner probably not the starting running back anymore, but they gave him another contract extension. Again, anything's possible with James Conner. He could continue to play. I don't want to doubt the dude. He's obviously overcome a lot in his life, but it's hard to parse through this backfield for sure. Because I really do see both scenarios as almost equally likely that Conner crushes again or Benson takes over the backfield. Like I think both scenarios are quite equally likely.
Yeah, and who knows? We've mentioned the fact that, if the Cardinals want to have a good passing game, they might have to add like a Keenan Allen or another receiver that they can rely upon. It's like, what if their answer is just, hey, through the passing game, we're going to fund it through Marvin, through Trey McBride, and we're going to run the heck out of these workhorse running backs.
Yeah, no, and they both running backs were pretty efficient as receivers last year too, so we could see a little bit more involvement there. Let's talk about the Titans and the Steelers. The Titans, Pollard and Spears, obviously Pollard and Spears both going very close in ADP from both formats, really. I mean, Pollard and Spears are further apart in redraft than they are in Dynasty because Spears is a little bit younger. It's RB33 for Pollard, RB39 for Spears in Dynasty. Both guys go in a range where I'm starting to think about taking running backs again. Like some of the receivers start to dry up in that territory. So unlike Pacheco and Swift and Connor, they're a little bit cheaper. So you can kind of stomach if you need production taking Pollard. If you want an upside play, you can take Spears. And it's not like you're passing on like Josh Downs to do it. You're probably passing on like Keon Coleman to do it, which is a little bit more stomachable at that point. And then redraft wise, Pollard was great last year, man. He carried a lot of touches, 317 opportunities. He was clearly the best running back on the team last year. Spears was hurt as hell, injury riddled all season. And Pollard's going RB28 right now, 82.5 overall. I guess the difference for me, why I have underweight on both of them, I have 4.5% Pollard, 6.8% Spears, is that I just prefer the running backs that go around Pollard more. But I don't think he's a bad pick, especially when you factor in that Cam Ward could really ceiling raise this offense. Like Pollard being an RB2 last year on a team that had the first overall pick is no small feat.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, but they do need reliable receivers as well. So I think they can coexist because Spears has been quietly one of the most efficient receivers on the team in the last 2 years. You're talking about his rookie season and even last year, you mentioned the injury concerns, but in his 2 seasons in the NFL, he's taken 105 targets. He's turned that into 82 receptions and over 600 receiving yards. So we're literally talking about a legitimate plus in the receiving aspect. So I think there is meat left on the bone where both these guys can coexist. And if Spears does show more health this year, I mean, we saw him down the stretch last year, 27.2 points, 21.6 points, 13.3 points in the final 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and the other thing too, like I said, structurally, if you need volume or whatever, I prefer the other options that go around Pollard because I feel like there's more of a threat with Spears to Pollard than there is like, say, Brashard Smith to Pacheco, who goes in a similar area, or Roschon to Swift, who goes in a similar area. So I like taking Spears more because Spears goes in a range where I'm looking for upside, and he has a lot of upside as evidenced by what he did when Pollard was out of the lineup last year. And you and I know firsthand what it looked like because we had him on the team that advanced to the Best Ball Mania finals. So Spears, he's one of those guys that can be a league winner if he gets the workload at the right time. And that's why he's interesting to me. The question is, can this dude stay healthy? I would say Pollard ran hot last year. Spears was hurt all year. Pollard ran hot because the volume was there for him. Could he run hot from an efficiency standpoint because Ward is better and the offense improves? Sure. But I think Spears will be a lot more involved.
And there's way more merit to what you're saying because we've literally heard from Brian Callahan himself that they want to divvy the workload more evenly. This is literally a report from him himself that he wants to divvy up the work between Spears and Pollard more evenly and take more of that workload off of Pollard.
Yeah, no, it's probably going to happen. I would imagine, but all of us expected this to be a 50-50 split last year, and it wasn't because Spears was banged up, and I think it will be this year, which means that the cheaper option is the one that I'm going to play it through.
This is the exact quote, by the way. Noted that Pollard in 2024 carried the ball a lot, and that in a perfect world, we have a more even split between him and Spears.
Yeah, and some people pointed to, when that report came out, people were like, well, that's not what you did last year. You said it, and you didn't do it. It's like, well, when one of your guys is banged up, you can't really give him a huge workload.
Yeah, and he got the best we saw Spears look. The biggest workload we saw from Spears came in the final 3 weeks we saw him.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like I've seen people say that he like stole his job or something. It's like Pollard was hurt at that point in the year. So I wouldn't say it really speaks anything negatively. I think Pollard is the guy that you want when healthy. It's just, is it going to last the whole year? How close is the split? If it's close and it doesn't last the whole year, it's a 50 pick discrepancy between the two guys.
What did you say that the Pollard opportunity share was last year?
It was high, man. I think it was like a top 12 opportunity share at the position.
To me, if both these guys are healthy, I think, okay, Pollard's probably the lean, but is that 55%? Is that 65%?
It was 73% last year, which is ninth among running backs.
I lean closer to a Pollard split of being a 55, 60% 1A type of lean is where I'm at with him.
Which again, 50 pick discrepancy, you're going to probably take Spears. And I think gun to our heads, a healthy Spears is probably better than a healthy Pollard at this point in Pollard's career.
Well, yeah, I mean, Pollard's aging. Pollard obviously had that significant knee injury. He got a lot of work last year, was more efficient last year than he was 2 years ago with the Cowboys, but not quite the same efficiency we saw from Pollard, I believe, 2022, where he was one of the biggest league winners in fantasy.
Yeah, the only thing that could go well for him is that he scores more than 5 touchdowns because, the offense is much better with Cam Ward than it was with Will Levis and whatever they were dealing with Rudolph and shit last year. Speaking of Rudolph, talk about the Steelers as the final team that we're looking at here. I think this one's less contentious just because I think conventional wisdom would say long-term, you're taking Caleb Johnson from a dynasty perspective. That's cut and dry. My only problem and the only conversation worth having from a dynasty angle, he's going off the board RB 19, 70th overall, despite being a third round NFL draft pick. And like some of the guys he goes over, especially at wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end, it's a little ridiculous to me. Like 70th overall ADP, we're talking like a 5th, 6th round pick in a startup.
Dude, I love Caleb Johnson. He was a guy that I had very, very high in my prospect rankings. Obviously, he goes to what I think is a perfect fit for him stylistically. We'll talk about the redraft angle in a second. But like you said, it all comes down to opportunity cost. 70 overall ADP. That's what, a 5th round pick?
Olave, Addison, Igbuka, Hawkinson are the immediate players going after him.
I can't do that over Igbuka in the same class. Like Igbuka is a guy I'd feel comfortable taking 107, 108 in my rookie drafts. I love Caleb Johnson, but the earliest I can do is probably like 112.
Yeah, and like if you equate his value, like I would trade away the 107, 108, 109 for Olave, Addison types, like Hawkinson types, like in terms of overall startup rank versus rookie rank. So yeah, I think Caleb being a little overvalued on casual formats. You and I, anytime I drafted Caleb Johnson in rookie drafts, it was 111, 112, 201. I never had to draft him higher than that.
Yeah, that's usually where he would go, and it makes more sense when you contextualize it like that. If he fell at that point of your rookie drafts, that's fine, but spending a 5th round, 6th round startup pick, I mean, I get it. I love Caleb Johnson, but a 3rd round rookie running back is just going to be inherently risky at the cost. Like I got Judkins at the 603 in one of my drafts.
Yeah, well, and speaking of Judkins, when you look at his redraft angle too, Caleb Johnson goes off the board RB 25, 75th overall. Again,
I'm in on him here.
You're in on him. The reason I'm not in on him is simply just that Judkins goes 1 pick ahead of him, and Swift and Pacheco go half round after him. And I have those guys RB 19, RB 21, and RB 22 respectively, and Caleb Johnson's my RB 28. So it's like I'm not going to end up with my RB 28 very often when my 19, 21, and 22 are going around them.
Yeah, so I do have Judkins a couple spots higher. I mean, Judkins, we literally talked about 10 guys we can't stop drafting. Like Judkins being a 7th round pick on Underdog is just some of the freest cash that we've seen. Make sure you go draft him using promo code FSE there, by the way. But Caleb Johnson I have as my RB 21 right now. The reason being is that when I'm looking at what the Steelers want to do with this backfield, it's very cut and dry for me. Najee Harris last year vacates 311 targets. And the first things that we have heard from Arthur Smith's mouth are talking about the cerebral aspect, the instinctual aspect of Caleb Johnson, the runner, how much he fits his scheme, obviously the size profile, the explosive between the tackles profile that he has. To me, it's very cut and dry. Caleb Johnson is going to get the between the tackles work and the goal line role, and Jaylen Warren's going to work on 3rd down and in receiving situations.
I guess because I'm not drafting either of these guys. Like I have not drafted Caleb one time in like 45 drafts, and I only have 2% Warren too. It's not like I'm fading Caleb because I think Warren's a better value. I actually just don't really like targeting this offense in general unless it's through the passing game, because I think Metcalf is a decent price, and I think Rodgers and Freiermuth are decent prices. I get maybe that's dumb because Arthur Smith is Arthur Smith and is going to probably run the ball like crazy. I just kind of don't love that both of them are being priced up to the point that it's, Arthur Smith loves to run the ball. It's like both of them, I'm not getting a discount on either, even though the backfield's quite unclear. I would rather wait until July, August, when we know more information about how this backfield is going to materialize, even if it means I have to spend a top 65 pick on Caleb Johnson as opposed to the top 75 pick that you're getting with it now. And if that happens, then I'll probably take a lot more Warren as well, because he'll probably drop quite a bit in ADP. I think Warren's a good player, and I think he's going to be a pest. And I think he actually does quite a few things that Caleb Johnson doesn't do well, mainly break off long runs, be a 3rd down back, pass protect, that kind of stuff.
To me, it's funny because obviously different, because in one situation, the Warren is the rookie, and in the other situation, the Caleb Johnson is the vet. But to me, it kind of profiles similar to what the Rams are like, where it's like Warren, Hunter, you got the space back, you got the receiving profiles, you want those explosive players in space. And obviously Kyron and Caleb Johnson, kind of like your no nonsense between the tackles guys. Obviously different archetypes, they're different builds, don't get me wrong, but in terms of their potential utility, I kind of see it playing out similarly. To me with Caleb Johnson, you kind of mentioned this, you think he's going to be a guy that could potentially rise in ADP. I just don't see a scenario where he'll lose ADP. He can only rise ADP. Like realistically, even in down scenarios, where does he fall to? The 80th overall pick? Like I don't see him falling any more than that.
I think overall wise, you're probably correct. I think it could become market sentiment that the guys that I have ranked over him stay over him, like Swift and Pacheco. And so like we get more buzz
they flip
in camp that Swift, Pacheco, Aaron Jones, Brian Robinson, RJ Harvey, James Conner, like guys like that are holding on to their jobs. That will inherently reduce Caleb Johnson's ADP because let's say we're getting reports in Pittsburgh that it's going to be a split or he's got to earn his stripes or he's learning or all this kind of stuff. So for me, it's like, I just kind of don't love the price right now. And either I'll bite the bullet and take the more expensive, more certain version of it when it comes, or I'll maybe get a discount on him if I'm not drafting him now and I'll get my shares later.
Yeah, to me, he's a player because I'm higher on the prospect profile. I want to be overweight on anyway. So if I'm getting my shares now, I'll just add more if he gets cheaper. And if he gets more expensive, I'll already have a boatload of shares.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the opposite. I'm like, I'm okay missing out if he gets more expensive and I'll bite the bullet on those shares later. The only time I felt like he's appropriately priced is in sharp dynasty rookie drafts where you can get him 111, 112. Yeah. Most dynasty rookie drafts that you guys send us, like he goes like 108. I'm like, there's no way I'm taking him that high.
Yeah, no, he's very polarizing. Again, he was a guy that I had as a top 4 running back in this class. I believe you had him, RB5 or RB6?
I had him RB5, but he was close to Tuten and Scadaboo and some of the guys that were at the top of that next tier.
Yeah. So that was the difference. I more so had him within the Henderson, the Judkins, that type of area. You had him after those guys pretty evidently.
Yeah, so we went through murky, mucky, muddy, disgusting backfields, dynasty, redraft, best ball, landscapes for all of them, because I mean, these are important decisions, man. Like you hit on a couple good backfield decisions. You can really transform a redraft team, a best ball roster, a dynasty roster. You can really get creative with how you build your teams. If you feel confident in some of these like takes, you're like, I'm not going to draft running backs early in my dynasty startup because I feel confident that Swift or Pacheco or one of the guys that goes later is going to be a really good option for me later in the draft. So that's kind of why we went through this. And we're going to do the same for wide receivers too. Because I mean, there's receiver cores like the Bears and the 49ers and the Packers and some of these teams that have a lot more up in the air than what we maybe are used to with some wide receiver cores. So if you guys want to see that video, obviously stay tuned for it. Like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. All of our dynasty rankings are going through a big update this week. We're going to be updating our dynasty trade value chart. So if you guys want access to that, and of course, later this week, we'll have dynasty trade targets by position. Stay tuned for it. Flockfantasy.com is where you can get the trade value chart. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up. 7 days for free, 30% off any of the packages, a free team review voucher when you sign up for an annual Mother Flocker package. And if you think about it, you sign up for an annual package right now at the end of June, you'll be covered redraft guide, redraft season, season-long fantasy, all that kind of stuff. And you'll be covered all through next dynasty fantasy football season, rookie time, rookie drafts, everything. You'll be covered. This is actually one of the better times to buy an annual, I think, because you get your best bang for your buck by getting redraft and dynasty covered for you, should you choose to not resubscribe a year from now. So with that being said, check that out if you guys are interested. Peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.